hit by James! Oh, what a goal! One of the greats! My word, this boy's a star!
The World Cup, like every major sporting event, is every marketer's wet dream. With billions of eyeballs cast over one event, there is no better time to show the world what you have to offer. But this doesn't only pertain to products. Players go to the World Cup primarily to represent their country, but they all know deep down that if they come up with the goods, a completely new life awaits. In the post-World Cup world we're all living in right now, there are several players that we just watched that many of us weren't super familiar with, but have left us with the sense that they will soon be snapped up by some major European giant in the coming weeks. 2014 was no different. To be fair, the player in question today was already quite well known in the lead-up, but after Brazil, he was propelled to household name level. And that man is James Rodríguez. A curious case. From rising prospects to absolute superstar to living the dream to nowhere to be seen. There's a lot that's gone down in the life of James over the past decade, which leaves us all with a few questions. And amongst those, one of the most prominent is, what happened to James Rodríguez? Yo, what's going on, guys? Hope you're doing well. I'm Tinashe and welcome back to Football Iconic. Honestly, cannot believe that the channel's reached 200k only 2 years after starting. So grateful to all of you guys, and there's a lot more on the way. But enough of that, let's get back to the reason that we've all gathered here today. Born in 1991 in Cúcuta, Colombia, as the story goes for most players of this profile, the guy was a child prodigy, essentially from the word go. He was the youngest player to start a professional match in Colombia at only 14 years of age with Envigado. He moved to the Argentinian Primera Division with Banfield and became the youngest foreign player to score in the league at only 17. It sounds all good at a glance, but in reality, his childhood was quite tough. He had football in his blood as his father was a former player himself. But that same father also left him and his mother at a young age when the two split. His mother and stepfather assumed the role of raising him, and they made it work. James was always gifted, so it helps that he was always focused and knew what he wanted. From my childhood, the thing I remember best is that I always wanted the ball. I was always thinking about playing football. He preferred advanced roles since the early days and was able to operate on the wing and up front. But it was the attacking midfield role just behind the striker where he always seemed to thrive. While he had great vision and a stellar attacking mind, what set him apart to me was his striking and finishing ability. If I were to think of the best pure strikers of a ball I've watched over the past years, James in his peak is very high up there. In the box, outside the box, the guy had a magic touch. He was good at just about everything you'd expect someone that played in his position to be good at. Sure, he wasn't the fastest around, but based on the area of the field that he operated in, that wasn't that much of a problem. And sure, he didn't track back all too much, but if we're all being honest, 10s really didn't have to track back all that much up until maybe the past 5 or 10 years when that became a necessity. Juan Riquelme, Francesco Totti, Michel Platini, Mikel Laudrup, the list goes on and on. All players that are referred to as classic traditional 10s, all supreme talents that lurk behind the striker, link the play, score when required, and didn't do a hell of a lot of defending. And for the first century or so of the modern game, even if these players were perfectly capable of doing so, they didn't really need to defend. The skills I've just mentioned above more than made up for that aspect of their game. Plus, the players around them could do the dirty work for them. However, due to the intensity of the game today and the need for industry all across the pitch, players like this do not exist anymore, which probably explains why James drew so much love from the football purists. Was he the last of a dying breed of 10s? A player with all these qualities that can also exist in the modern game?
We will watch your career with great interest.
That was more or less the narrative early in his career, but as we all know, narratives are generally quite fluid. With Banfield, he was given all kinds of nicknames and adjectives to go along with his mesmerizing performances. At a domestic level, the person that most were quick to compare him to was his predecessor of sorts, Carlos Valderrama, a legendary Colombian 10 who did wonders in inspiring a nation of up-and-coming ballers. James was one of them. He was compared to Cristiano Ronaldo due to how he styled his hair and also based on the fact that he preferred to use Real Madrid when playing FIFA. As we can see, he is a sweat. But the most amusing nickname to me is the James Bond of Banfield. of course due to his looks and sleekness on the pitch. After doing his thing in Argentina, Porto, who clearly have one of the strongest Latin American recruitment departments in the world, came in for the man on the 6th of July 2010. 5.1 million euros. He was 19 at this point. And he was in good company. Like I said, Porto's American scouting team knew what they were doing. Amongst others from his home continent, Radamel Falcao, a fellow Colombian actually, had joined Porto a year earlier, also from an Argentine club. Even Bruce Banner himself was there. After his big transfer to Europe, James almost immediately began to live up to expectations. After a season of settling in where he made 15 appearances from a possible 30, he came into the 11-12 season with something to prove: 14 goals and 12 assists. Mostly as an inverted winger, starting out wide but cutting in, he had a fantastic year. He won the Primera Liga Breakthrough Player of the Year and was expected to continue this form in the following year, which he did. All in all, he won 3 Primera League titles with them, as well as the Europa League in 2011. These performances led to Monaco deciding to spend big on the man. 45 million euros. And once again, he joined up with his fellow Colombian Radamel Falcao. And this was quite a big window for Monaco. Just to add a little bit of context, Monaco are a historically significant French football club, 7-time French top division champions by the year 2000. However, in 2011, they were relegated to Ligue 2. Embarrassing, for sure. 2 years later, they were back up and spent no less than 137 million euros on player transfers in their first season back in the top flight. And they gave it a good go. Finishing in second is pretty good for a newly promoted team, if you ask me. And James was the centerpiece. He was Monaco's player of the season, in the Ligue 1 team of the year, and was the Ligue 1 top assister with 13. He also scored 9 goals in the league, all while playing in that illustrious hole between the attack and the midfield. Throughout the season, at just 22 years of age, several news outlets and several fans, the ones with brains at least, shared the belief that this kid was something special. They also shared the belief that he was about to have a bumper of a World Cup. But I don't think many of those people expected what was coming next. Going into the 2014 World Cup, Colombia had a good squad. All the same, they were missing their talisman, Radamel Falcao, through injury, a big loss. Despite this, they cruised through the groups, winning all 3 matches. James Rodríguez scored in all 3. Things were looking good. The boy really did step up. Next up was the round of 16, and this is where our guy's life would change forever. Uruguay stood against the Colombians, and James decided to show everyone what he was truly made of. In the 28th minute, both teams decided to play one touch, refusing to let the ball hit the ground. The ball came to James, and after a soft chest down, he laced it into the top left on the volley. Goal of the tournament, and the Puskas confirmed. And this was the kind of goal that you remember exactly where you were when it went in. Me personally, I was with the boys, and none of us could believe what we were witnessing. And he wasn't even done yet. Another goal in the match sealed Colombia's first ever quarterfinals appearance. However, a 2-0 loss to the hosts, Brazil, spelled the end of their run. It also spelled the beginning of James Rodríguez's life as a global icon, the winner of the Golden Boot, and even though Messi won it, some believe that he deserved the Golden Ball too. Rodríguez was the best player of the World Cup, Diego Maradona.
Whoever's involved in this, stop it.
Like I said, he was already pretty well known at this point. A year prior, a lot was made over how many teams were after him before his transfer to Monaco. Even Manchester United reportedly bid 30 million euros for him. But regardless of the generation, there is only one club where, if given the choice, every little boy dreams of playing for. Can you guess what I'm talking about? I have a great deal of respect for other clubs and admire the good football they play, but ultimately, Real Madrid are Real Madrid. I've always had a thing for them. It's my life's dream. Literally 1 week after this quote went public and the World Cup came to a close, he signed a 6-year deal with the European champions. And as far as first seasons go, his numbers were great and he was putting in some incredible performances and scoring some sublime goals. What I said about his striking and finishing rang true for sure. 17 goals, all in all, and 18 assists in 46 overall appearances. In the league, he was scoring or assisting almost every time he took to the pitch. As a result, he was named La Liga's midfielder of the season. And it certainly helps that he was managed by Carlo Ancelotti, who has historically been a lover of playmakers. After all, his legendary Milan of the mid-2000s had 2 of them. Above and beyond that, Ancelotti is well renowned for his calm, aloof, free personality and approach to management. He still demands a lot from his players, but he takes the buddy approach. James thrived under this, which makes sense. He plays in the free role. Now, all of this is fantastic, but below the surface, this is roundabout where the cracks began to show for James. Despite the fact that he was playing a lot, he never really solidified his role or even position in the team, being deployed as a right winger 16 times, a left winger 10 times, an attacking midfielder 13 times, and a central midfielder a handful of times in his first season, and being given different tasks almost every time. Now, he did adapt really well in each of these settings, essentially doing the same thing, just being geographically located in different spots on the pitch. But was this maybe a sign that he didn't have a natural home in this team? Maybe. We do know one thing. Rafa Benitez, the next incoming manager, certainly felt that way. This guy is known to be a no-nonsense, high-intensity, buy-into-the-project kind of guy. Not necessarily the kind of guy that's super appreciative of the free role, i.e. not exactly a James kind of guy. Zinedine Zidane, the manager after him, similarly didn't seem to be a fan of James in his system. To go with all of that, his injuries began to pile up. Because of that, and probably a few other reasons, his fitness began to dip, and the intensity required by Madrid's side began to increase exponentially. Combine Zidane's disinterest with using a 10 and his unwavering loyalty to a starting 11, and what you get is Rodríguez's game time nosediving. I don't want to sound dramatic or anything, but that's more or less what it was. On screen, we can see his minutes played from 2014 through to 2017 for Madrid. It's a telling picture. He may have been better suited to the modern game than advanced playmakers of the past, but at the end of the day, he was still a 10. And I guess he didn't do a hell of a lot to convince Madrid and the higher-ups that he could adapt to the system that they were trying to play in. Things weren't working out, and you can't really argue with Zidane's choices here. Guy came in and rinsed Europe immediately, with ousting James being just one of the decisions he made along the way. By 2017, James was only 26, far from washed. Especially considering the fact that Bayern Munich were offering him a lifeline to get his career back on track in the form of a 2-season loan with an option to buy. With Carlo Ancelotti as the Bayern coach, it couldn't get much better for James, really. And he did well, even drawing praise from Bayern CEO Karl-Heinz Rummenigge. Despite this, a good 2-year stint where he even managed to score against his parent club in a Champions League semi-final didn't materialize into a permanent move. According to Rummenigge, Bayern were keen for him to stay, but James himself requested they do not activate their option to buy. Several conflicting stories have come out offering explanations for all of this. James not being entirely happy with the hierarchy of the club, Bayern not having complete faith in the Colombian. The truth likely lies somewhere in between all of this. And because James is the luckiest man on earth, Zidane left Madrid in mid-2018 only to return 10 months later, just in time to welcome our guy back to Madrid. This time, the fact that he wasn't part of Madrid's plans were even more evident. He played just over 400 minutes in his 4th and last season in the Spanish capital as Zidane and the boys won another league title. Yet again, it was time to go. So put yourself in this guy's shoes for a moment. You've gone from being the most talked about baller on the planet to living the dream to being outcasted, all within the space of about a year, and have struggled to make your way back ever since. What do you do? Where do you go? Well, there's only one answer: Everton. Look, Carlo Ancelotti was there. I'll say it with all sincerity that if Carlo wasn't here, I wouldn't have come. I'll say it with all my heart. He was one of the reasons for which I came. I wonder why he joined Everton. A mystery. Anyway, he came on a free, and if I'm being completely fair, it seems like this was a masterstroke early on. The first 5 or so games of the year were very promising. Dominic Calvert-Lewin was thriving, and Rodríguez was following suit. 3 goals and 3 assists in those first 5 games for James made a lot of people believe he had finally found his new home. But reality struck pretty quickly, as did Rodríguez's injury-prone body. By this point, not only was his body made of glass, but he pretty much seemed to give up. Everton slumped to 10th that year, and James slumped further below that. In the lead-up to the next campaign, Ancelotti left and in came Rafa Benitez. Second time that sequence of events has happened. There was only one way that this whole thing would finish. Now, James has been labeled as lazy several times in his career. It's what happens when you play the kind of game that he plays. But he was always able to mask his imperfections in his game by having pristine performances and by having reliable teammates. It seemed that the stars weren't aligned for him anymore. In fact, they hadn't been for a while by this point. Back in 2019, after returning to Real Madrid, a former Colombian team doctor, Hector Fabio Cruz, had some choice words for the man. The boy isn't focused. Instead of working for the new season, he went to fix his eyebrows and his hair while he should have been working. Big teams like Madrid expect professionalism, someone who will be prepared. But this boy has a bad head, a player who spends months away from the pitch and goes from club to club. How does he stay there? If he prepared properly, he wouldn't suffer any of this. I already predicted that it would go wrong because he doesn't work. Oof, that was brutal. Now, Cruz did apologize for these comments, but I think that the damage was already done. Towards the end of his Everton career, he didn't shower himself in glory by going live on Twitch and admitting to not knowing who Everton were playing that weekend, even asking his chat to help him out. Nor did he do himself any favors by visibly vaping on a yacht after the season had already begun. And for Everton fans, the worst part of all of this is that many were genuinely elated to see a player like this guy come over to Goodison. However, not only was he a disappointment, but Everton fans never even got to see him live, only through a TV, as the games were behind closed doors at the time in the heat of lockdown. Since 2021, James has played in Qatar and now finds himself in Greece, where he seems to be doing okay. But at the same time, his time at the top has almost certainly come to an end. And at just 31, the man who had the world at his feet less than a decade ago has faded into obscurity. A curious case, indeed. Of course, the guy's had success that just about everyone watching this video can only dream about dreaming of, but based on what he showed us between about 2010 and 2015, this is not how this was supposed to go. Me personally, I prefer to remember 2014 James, the guy who mesmerized us and made us all flock to YouTube to watch his highlights. A simpler time. And there we have it. Let me know what you guys think about James. Feel free to follow all the socials. That's all from me today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you're having a great day. Cheers, and I will catch you in the next one.